Want to welcome everybody to the next session here in the morning. Thanks everybody for quieting down so quickly. That was quite impressive. My name is Randall Wrighty, and I'm a Los Alamos County Councilor. And our next session is EM enabling DOE's national security mission. And so we have a great panel here today. Unfortunately, one of our speakers isn't able to make it today. They're under the weather, so hope Connie has a quick recovery. And there was a lot of information presented yesterday. And I think one of the words that did come up yesterday was alignment. And I think that's an important thing in terms of enabling missions, across parts of the Department of Energy. So I think that's something that we'll probably hear a little bit about today. So with that, I just wanted to kick things off and ask each of the speakers to just briefly introduce themselves as we go through the list. We'll start with Jim here. And so just wanted to see if he could provide us an overview of how EM can assist NNSA in DOE's goal of modernizing the nuclear deterrent. Start with that question, perhaps, and then get into how well are EM and NSA working together, and what are some of the critical near-term areas where EM can assist the mission.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I am Jim McConnell. I am the Associate Principal Deputy Administrator in NNSA. And the first point I want to let everybody know is that an hour and 20 minutes ago, if everything went off as planned, Brandon Williams was sworn in as the administrator. So we now have a confirmed and in the chair administrator and undersecretary for nuclear security. Great news for me, if not for all of you. So let me start off. This is the question: how can EM help with modernizing the nuclear deterrent? EM has a long history of helping NNSA and helping us modernize the deterrent. So this is really just an update. What's going on right now, and how is EM continuing to support that mission and the collaboration of these two key elements of the Department of Energy. And there are many ways, so many that I'm almost a little concerned about leaving somebody out who is making a significant contribution to our overall mission. So this is just a sampling. So first off, of course, is our mission inherently involves generating waste. It's just fundamental to what we do. And if we're going to execute our mission and be appropriate stewards and manage the waste and minimize the waste and deal with that issue appropriately across the entire department, we obviously rely very heavily on our EM support, and we'll get into, for example, WIP and TRU is right up there, but all other kinds of waste, is important too, and the help we get there. Our enterprises and the sites that we maintain are relatively old. They've been around for a long time. Most of them date back to the Manhattan Project or the early days of the Atomic Energy Commission. There's a lot of old facilities that we don't need anymore, that we would really love to recover the land and then build something new to help us to continue to modernize. And that's another place where we rely heavily on the expertise and the capabilities of the Office of Environmental Management to come in and help us with the D&D to allow us to then rejuvenate and revitalize our enterprise. I can't overstate how essential that is. There's a lot of collaboration we do. There's a shocking news. There's some bureaucracy associated with our enterprise. And we would very much like to figure out how to efficiently and effectively get our work, continuously improve how we get our work done, minimize that bureaucracy. It's important. We do hazardous work and national security work, and so there's a lot of appropriate controls and processes. But there's always an opportunity to make those better. And many of the things that we do in NNSA are similar to the things that EM does, and so we collaborate very carefully and very productively with EM and the Office of Science and many other parts of the department to help us try and figure out how to be as efficient and effective in our processes as we can be. We have a very strong incentive in NNSA, a very mission-driven need to continuously accelerate how quickly we can do our work. We have a lot of things that are time-bound, and therefore those opportunities to save time is just as important as the saving of money. And for us, often those two things are very much associated. Let me talk about a couple of specific things, though, that really get to the heart of what's significantly challenge to our NNSA mission and then the EM connection. So the first thing is, if you've ever been in one of these conferences that was focused on NNSA, the first topic would be something called pit production, which is critical to our work. And a big part of pit production is to refit the one major operating facility we have that does plutonium work at Los Alamos, the plutonium facility, PF4, which means removing old equipment and then creating space within that operating facility to bring in new equipment that we can use to do pit manufacturing. Well, those old glove boxes are obviously contaminated, and they're big, and they're difficult, and they take up a lot of space. And so one of the key things that EM is helping us with is we can take those boxes with the capabilities that the Office of Environmental Management has, size reduce them, reduce the problem we have of having to store those big now waste boxes, so that we can continuously support the production mission and the project to retrofit PF4, which is a direct contribution to our ability to make plutonium pits and support the nuclear deterrent. But a nuclear deterrent is more than just pits. You also have to have secondaries. And in order to have secondaries, you have to have uranium. And then you have to connect the two with something called a radiation case. And that involves uranium also. And so one of the other things that's very much of an important collaboration across NNSA and environmental management is there are resources that currently reside with EM for uranium tails and other forms of depleted uranium, particularly that EM has or has been managing and responsible for years, that are now a very important asset for NNSA to allow us to continue to do our work on the uranium side of our mission. And without that collaboration and without that asset, that is essential to us to being able to go forward with our stockpile modernization. So those are just two examples that are very, very closely tied to our mission. There are many, many more, but I've already taken 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jim. So I think we want to now turn to talking about some more examples from some sites. And so question is, what are some operational challenges of doing EM work at NNSA sites? And what actions are underway or planned to reduce burdens and cut red tape? So I guess we could start with Jeff.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Jeff Griffin. I'm President and CEO of Savannah River Nuclear Solutions. Past time at Savannah River National Lab, Canadian Nuclear Lab, and Office of Environmental Management. So a little bit of history in this world. So actually, I think most of you probably will know this, that the Savannah River site actually almost exactly a year ago, October 1st of 24, shifted from being an Office of Environmental Management managed site to an NNSA managed site. So we've actually been kind of living what we're talking about here over the last year. Actually, even prior to that, as we did the checklist preparing to get to the point of the transition. And I think, what I'm going to say, a lot of it's going to kind of echo Jim's comments. I think the challenges have fallen in, and these aren't necessarily bad things, but the challenges have fallen in the areas of infrastructure, infrastructure, the way you view the infrastructure, which is obviously things like roads and administration buildings, housing for staff. And as one thing in the EM world, because of the expected duration of the mission, is quite different in the NNSA world because of the enduring nature of the mission. So we've been working through that. We've had to, from our standpoint, we've had to beef up our strategic planning quite a bit for the infrastructure around the site. We were working closely with EM and an NSA, and I'll come back to that in just a minute, the respective field offices. But it is about the roads, it's about the housing and things like that, but it's also about, and this is more of a perspective of the NNSA challenge, but we need classified spaces. So we have this, we've always had the tritium mission, and of course there's the EM missions that are continuing to happen at Savannah River. But now in the last few years, we've added the pit production, the large scale pit production. Of course, first we've got to actually build the facility and got to set up the operations, got to bring all that together. So that's, to do all that, obviously you've got to have the people, so housing for them, but you've also got to have the classified spaces where you can do the work, skips where you can hold the conversations you need to have. And that's not really something that was extensively present on the Savannah River site. So we're working through all that. As I said, we have to deal with 2 field offices, which is great, which is fine. Actually, Edwin with the EM field office, Michael McConnell with the Savannah River field office for NNSA. Both of them are great to work with. Their teams are good, but their teams have changed. So a year ago, Michael's office took over from Edwin's. And people have shifted around. Of course, you had quite a bit of change across all of DOE and NNSA over the last year with the new administration and some of the deferred departures. And so we've had people from the government side that have moved over from one side to the other. We have to deal with the funding issues because we're in continuing resolution, which is actually a little bit of a different issue. Even we have some funding that remains in EM, even though it's an NNSA facility. So the challenges of all those things is communications, is how we work through all that together. I think we're doing it pretty well. As Jim said, it's certainly a lot of collaboration, but it actually takes a lot of work to do that. And we're all kind of learning our way through this. And the other interesting thing I thought about the other day is I see Edwin's in here now, but we actually have, within the last year, we have almost all the principals at the site, with the exception of Michael, are new. So Edwin stepped into a new role. I stepped into a new role. Tom Burns for SRMC and Johnny Green for SRNL. So you've got all these new roles, new people, new relationships. So it's all been, kind of how do we work together and bring it all together? Well, I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks. Maybe we could, Sean, you want to introduce yourself briefly and tell us a little bit about Oak Ridge?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Sean Dunagan. I am responsible for all the waste operations and management program that we have going on out at UCOR in Oak Ridge. Prior to that, I've had 20 plus years living in this world, mostly in the waste department. I was at WIP previously, and Sandy National Labs prior to that. So to answer the question, operational challenges for EM working on an NSA site, there definitely are some. It's a challenge for those of you who've been to Y12. It's a tight configuration. We are often doing active demolition of a facility directly next to an area or a building that is critical to the mission for the national security. We have to ensure that that mission is going on uninterrupted while we are doing our demolition of the facilities or deactivation demolition of the facilities. It requires intense cooperation, collaboration. As Jeff said, so much of this is just collaborating with all the different groups that are there, from the contractor side to the DOE to regulators to the community, and making sure that everyone has a voice and that all the priorities are continuing to be met moving forward. Throughout the process, it involves many different groups, but there's tremendous benefit to it in the end. And that with each building that we take down at Y12, we're able to help modernize the mission that is going to be going on there for NNSA. Currently, there's money going towards those aging facilities. The infrastructure definitely is a challenge that can be used better for the NNSA mission moving forward. And every time we take down a building, it frees up those dollars for that. We've had the opportunity at ETTP, not on an NSA site, but to give an example of how we can close the fuel cycle, close the whole cycle, and be able to reuse that space. And that's what we're doing at Y12 as well. We have a number of constructions that are going, or sorry, demolitions that are going on right now. Alpha 2 is obviously the biggest one that we have. That's a former enrichment facility that was 325,000 square feet. It's going to free up 2.5 acres for use. So we're looking very forward to seeing how that's going to be used in the future for NNSA, and we're looking forward to being able to cooperate more with the owner or the operator of that area, CNS, and the owner NNSA moving forward. And we'll be able to collaborate with them and be successful doing so.
Okay, thanks a lot. Want to turn now. So we've already heard about waste as one of the big issues associated with any kind of operations, in particular national security operations. So one kind of general question would be, how is EM working with NNSA to make sure that there is sufficient long-term disposal capabilities, and maybe come back to Jim for this one.
The issue of making sure that there is a long-term, reliable, safe, environmentally appropriate and regulatorily acceptable system to dispose of waste, everything from low-level transuranic, all the waste, hazardous but non-nuclear waste that we generate is absolutely essential to our mission and essential to the responsible stewardship of both our stockpile and also the sites and in the communities that we operate. So, I can't overstate how fundamentally important this aspect of our mission is, even from the side of the generator. Consistent with the principles of RCRA, and I've said this at other open meetings, that we completely understand that the generator has a significant role to play and a responsibility when it comes to waste management, and we take that very seriously. The good news is that we have lots of very talented professionals with the skills to manage waste on the NNSA side, but there's a much larger population of people with that skill on the EM side that we very carefully rely on. We'll get, I sit next to Mark, so I don't know what the equivalent of mansplaining is here, but we have this collaboration that we have to do, for example, to talk about transuranic waste, from the generator's perspective, to make sure that the waste that we generate is compliant with the WIPWAC, to make sure that our down to the scheduling and the resources, which isn't simply just dollars and time, but it's the talented people. Some of our waste streams and some of our legacy waste is unusual, and it requires close collaboration with really talented people to make sure we can maximize the appropriate activity, and to make sure that both the waste we send to these limited resources is compliant, and we are prioritizing correctly across an enterprise, across the country that has these needs. I think we do it pretty well. I think it is something that will always require quite a bit of attention of senior leaders, both on the federal and our M&O contractor side. But I am so thankful for talented people like Mark and everyone else that's involved. And I don't want to just focus on transuranic waste, because any one of our waste streams, the inability to deal with it is essentially an existential risk to our ability to continue to do our mission.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And turn next to Mark to talk about WIP. Specifically, what is the future of disposal at WIP? And we heard a little bit about this yesterday, but that's probably good to hear a little bit more. And then what actions are underway at WIP to help ensure and continue to provide that long-term support for waste disposal of the tree. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, it is Mark again for the third time. And since Connie couldn't be here, I think, Wayne, we should attribute everything I say to Connie today and this particular panel. Please do that. The story of WIP support to NNSA is long and successful, and there are many, many examples in the past where we've stepped up to help on particular issues. The cleanup mission we have for legacy waste should be clear after what we've talked about. In Hanford will be many, many years of cleanup. We need to stay available for legacy cleanup for a long, long time. It just so happens that also means we will be able to support the NNSA mission for a long, long time. We have plenty of capacity for everything that Jim and his team has currently contemplated for many, many decades to come. All of his waste and all waste that comes to WIP, no matter what it is, must meet the WIP WAC. We are a compliant facility, and so there's no options. So we must work closely with them on the generation side, and we've been developing closer and closer relationships to make sure that as it's generated, it's put in a form and a method so that we can easily accept it and get it through their characterization and certification process. Mistakes can easily be made in that process that would cause you hundreds of millions of dollars of issues and a lot of time down the line. So we need to be working very, very closely. Some of our more recent successes are from the surplus plutonium program at Savannah River. We went through nothing short of really a cultural change at WIP over the last, say, 5 years. And that is because for our first 20 years, we're really handling waste. And in these last 5 years, we've been handling materials. And there's a big difference in our world in how you handle those and how you account for those things. And that is not something we've done at WIP before. So in order to support the generator and to support new requirements, we've been sort of coming up to speed, if you will. And I think that exercise, although it's mostly on pause right now, we've learned a lot. We've grown much closer to NNSA. Our ability to support them is much, much better than it was in the past. Our efforts, I think, as Jim talked about, really are about space in a lot of cases, right? So at Lannell, you heard at Oak Ridge and at others, despite how big our sites are, Jim really needs the space in order to get the job done. And so we've got to be there. We've got to be a reliable partner. I talked yesterday a lot about our infrastructure and everything we're doing regulatorily to have decades and decades of reliable partnership to take that waste. We're poised to get there with some hoisting capability. So we're very proud of the progress we made, and we have a good plan to get there. I want to leave you with a thought that we are in the business of cleaning up legacy waste. And with Jim, what we're really doing is new legacy prevention. I know that we've had generations of jobs cleaning up this legacy, but these are not the jobs we want to leave to our children and our grandchildren and their children. We need to prevent new legacies from developing. And so we need to be there and be a reliable partner for Jim and the group. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So one other thing that we did have on the list, there was also, I think Jim alluded to just the overall process. Are there any other sites that are currently being looked at, including sites like Nevada, for waste disposal currently or in the near future? Yeah, it was.
So the current waste disposal facility at Nevada is another one of those extremely unique and critical assets that allow us to continue to operate efficiently, effectively, and appropriately in accordance with both with all of our regulations, but also with our intentions. And so one of the things, for example, that Nevada allows is that we can dispose of classified waste. And NNSA that's a really big deal for us. If, some things we can demilitarize or make unclassified, and that is perfectly a good solution, and then send it to other disposal facilities. But one, that takes additional steps and additional time. And if this, for example, if this waste is radioactive, that means exposure to additional workers. But there are some cases where that's just not practical or feasible or efficient and effective. And Nevada is an example of a very unique asset that allows us to do that. It's a big place. But surprisingly, even though the Department of Energy operates lots of land, we end up being constrained in a lot of ways. And so we have to be very careful to make sure that we are good stewards of our assets, and that the places where we can dispose of waste are assets. And we treat them that way, and then we need to give them that respect. And so another example from our perspective there is that if we don't appropriately manage those assets, then we have the potential for the back end of our system to become the rate limiting step, and therefore we reduce our ability to support the national security and our warfighters. That's an unacceptable outcome. And so that is a very significant and high priority thing for us to do, even on the generator side of things.
Thank you. So I just wanted to let people know that we will, I think, have some time for questions. And then if you do want to ask a question, you have to get really close to the microphone. That's the only tip for making sure that you're heard. So yeah, I think the next thing we want to cover is try to get some specifics on some work that's being done at particular sites, examples that is currently, supporting the NNSA missions. So we'll start with Sean this time.
Absolutely. And I do want to echo what has been said about waste. Really, whenever you're doing D&D activities like we are out at UCOR for Y12 and the support NSA, it all begins with understanding the waste you're going to generate and following through with that and characterizing it appropriately. We have a waste hierarchy that we go through. We have an on-site landfill for sanitary waste. We have an on-site circular disposal facility, EMWMF. We're under construction for another one, environmental management disposal facility, EMDF. If we're unable to dispose of it on site, NNSS is the federal option that we go to. And if that doesn't meet if we can't meet the WAC for that, then we go to the offsite or the commercial offsite places such as WCS and Clive and others. So we definitely go down that progression. And of course, if it's transuranic, it will go to WIP. But I wanted to point that out just to echo what people had said about waste. I mentioned Alpha 2 a little bit ago, and that's just a huge facility that is going to open up quite a bit of land for Y12. And there are so many unique hazards in dealing with these facilities that are dated, decades and decades old from the Manhattan Project. You get in there and you find unique little items that you weren't always planning on: beryllium, mercury, other hazardous elements that you don't really want to have to deal with on a daily basis. But if you get up front of it with the characterization of the waste, that's where you're really going to be able to save time and energy and be able to properly plan for that work. Another big job that we have going on right now is Beta 1, where we've removed approximately 14 million gallons of water from the basement during deactivation. We began CSL emplacement there. That is a critical step in establishing the infrastructure that is solid enough to go into the demolition phase. We have Alpha 4. We're preparing for deactivation now. We're moving legacy waste containers and isolating the utilities. Like I said earlier, we have to make sure that all of the other facilities that are around that particular one are able to continue their mission daily, uninterrupted. So we have to isolate and reroute a lot of utilities is a significant part of what our work is. And the last one that I would mention that's critical to us being able to continue our work to support NNSA is the EMDF facility. And we are going in now to the second season of the groundwater field demonstration. That will help to identify what the final design is for it. And really, that is what's going to allow us to continue all of the work that we have scheduled on contract with NNSA and Y12 so that they can continue their mission, as well as Oak Ridge National Lab. all of Oak Ridge Reservation, EMDF will support the work that's going on there from a circular perspective.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
Thanks, Randall. So sort of a similar story. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're building the pit production facility. It's a massive enterprise to build that in terms of construction effort, and you obviously need the space. We're doing this over in F area, which was largely excess EM facilities, that we have to disposition eventually. EM took pretty rapid steps to sort of reduce the footprint out there in that area so that we could have the space to bring in the construction and operate the construction. And obviously this includes like warehouses, creating warehouse space across the site as a whole. And then we deactivated some of our process labs and all that so that we can sort of reduce the resources needed from EM in the area and be able to bring in more staff to support the construction effort. So that's probably the biggest, effort that support where EM has really stepped up to help us in the NSA.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, just, yeah, Jeff.
So one other aspect that I didn't have a good place to bring this up, but it's great news that I wanted to, because it's timely, but it's an example again of how the interactions happen, and some of these things are more nuanced or complicated than people might perceive. But one of the things that's been going on at Y12 for quite a while is something called the West End Protection Area Reduction. So there's a very large part of Y12 is inside a security area because of the work that was done in the Manhattan Project and has been going on ever since. And so a large effort has been going underway for a while now to reduce the size of that area and to make the security perimeter that surrounds the part that remains as high security smaller and more appropriate to the current NNSA footprint. And just this week, we hit a particularly important milestone. The fence has a technical term. I won't get into it, but we had to rebuild a big portion of that fence that has now been tested and energized so that we can get to the point where literally half of the old area is now going to be unclassified, which happens to be the area that Sean and others need to access in order to help us with D&D and waste management. And so now they can bring in unclassified workers and not have to go through all the burden and the time consumption of getting in and out of secure areas. So they can help us faster. They can do it cheaper. They can provide better results for the entire nation and the government and your tax dollars. And so we end up with a cheaper operation for both sides, higher security for both sides, and a little less of this potential need to deconflict operations. So is a lot of the cooperation that's required and the dance that goes between these activities is very tightly choreographed, and we look carefully at all the different ways to help each other as best as possible. And this is one of the clearest win-wins that I know of, and it's making great advances.
Okay, thanks for adding that. I just also wanted to note, because I think sometimes is like the question is what actions are being done, but there was actually an action that was deferred in Los Alamos that was really critical to the continued operations of the mission there. So I think it can go both ways. Sometimes you accelerate work, you can get some facilities cleared up, but also it's important to make sure you don't have conflicting activities. So I guess if the audience has any questions, sometimes it takes a second. Yeah, make sure you get really close to the microphone.
How about now? Okay. I'm Wayne Barber with the Exchange Monitor newsletters. Questions regarding Savannah River pit production facilities for Mr. McConnell and Mr. Griffin, I guess. How has this environmental litigation affected your schedule for the work going on there? And when in 2026 is 90% of the design for the pit production facility at Savannah River is supposed to be, I think it's 90% complete.
I'm sorry, Wayne, could you repeat the last part of well, go back to the first part and then make sure I got all that.
Oh,
because
okay. Some of the environmental and anti-nuclear groups sued, I think it's NNSA, about an environmental impact statement they wanted before the thing got fully built. And I think the deal is you're building some of the non-classified stuff now, but waiting on the classified stuff later, I think. So I was wondering how the schedule was affected and was wanting to know the date for 90% of the design to be complete.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to answer that one on the 90% design complete. I mean, we're working right now with NNSA pretty strongly on all this, where we stand and all that. Of course, as Jim noted, we have I believe, as he said, just confirmed NA1. So we'll be having a lot of discussions, and there's, as I think most people are aware, there's pretty close look across NNSA on what the schedule is and how we can bring these things back to the left. So I'll just pass on that.
Yeah, so the environmental, the NEPA activity that was fundamental to the lawsuit, is continuing on schedule to be responsive to the settlement agreement, and to the best of my knowledge, that's on track in a way that won't result in any schedule impacts that we hadn't already addressed through the settlement agreement. And I brought a lot of notes with me today, but not the schedule for SRPPF. So I'm going to have to take that one and get back to you.
Morning. Brant Hancock with Lawrence Livermore. Sean, like Y12, we're a smaller site, space constrained, and mission integrity protection during our EM work is obviously very important to us as well. I was curious if you had any lessons learned or things you can share that have really worked out well for partnering with active national security programs to make sure they're not impacted during EM mission work.
Sorry, I had a hard time hearing you a little bit.
Sorry. So is that better?
Yes.
I was hoping, like I said, at Livermore, we're rather space constrained, just like Y12. So I was hoping you could share maybe some lessons learned in partnering with the programs to maintain that mission integrity while also forwarding the EM mission in support of NNSA.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We have regular meetings with our construction and program integration group, with CNS's group, with NSA, with OREM, all coming together. For the big picture, strategically looking at it, I think it's 3 times a year on the trimester meetings, whenever we get together and we take an overall strategic look at what we want to do moving forward and how we can align our priorities. That is the beginning of where we really set up how we're not going to have any conflicts or operational challenges moving forward. From there, it moves into smaller groups where they're further integrated, and then the development of the schedule and the priorities furthers. It's really just a series of organized meetings and integrated activities with the various entities involved to make sure that all of it is going to be occurring at the same time. If you're on a small site where you're doing similar things, you definitely know some of the challenges there. And there's often small subcontractors who are performing some of the work, such as like utility reroutes. That has to be factored into it. It has to be factored into who is owning the land, who owns the safety program, who owns the procedures that you're going through to bring things on site once it's there. There's just contractually, you have to make sure that all of that is taken care of before you get into any of the D&D activities so that it can move smoothly. And so much of that is a coordinated effort between the contractors, but also on the federal side between NSA and OREM to make sure that they're all in alignment with what the priorities are and how to get there. Lessons learned in terms of specifics, it would just be focus on the contracts up front, focus on the safety programs up front, and get everybody involved. And the earlier you begin, the better off you'll be.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions that we had already created for the panel. So I think I want to jump to what we had as the last question first. So it has to do with workforce. So we'd heard about, infrastructure, kind of the physical, and we'd heard a lot about the workforce yesterday and earlier this morning. So, and there might be different workforce, needs when you're transitioning, from EM to NSA, or, you have different kinds of skill sets needed, but there's some overlap and there's some competition. So just interested in how, the different sites are looking at workforce, and how that's able to support an NSA. And then how are, some cases NNSA sites, industry working together. So maybe we'll go back to Mark to start.
So obviously, if you've been to Carlsbad, you know that getting a workforce there is extremely challenging. The mission, again, is the passion. And so people love to work at WIP. They love the mission. They love what they're doing. But sometimes it can be hard to be away from families or away from particular services. What we're doing is making a large investment in the community itself and the youth of the community, because what we found is that folks born and raised there tend to stay there and are much longer serving employees. My chief of staff is here. He's got 40 years on the project, if you remember his speech from last year. Born and raised in Carlsbad. So what we've done is put some money into the local community college and really focused on a lot of the trades. We're doing rad tech work. They're even doing truck driving work. They're doing electrical, control systems. I think they'll be doing other trades, plumbing and things like that, and really making a huge investment in the community, in the kids in the community, and trying to keep them there. The old model was they would go to the junior college, then off to a four-year school, and they may not come back. And this model, we can put them to really, really useful work. The other thing, I think the issue you raise really is competition for the limited workforce that you have in those communities, right? A lot of the EM folks end up in NSA jobs, and Jessica and the team and even my team lose a lot of folks to the NSA work. We have the same problem in our community with oil and gas and the potash industry, and a lot of sort of borrowing from each other, stealing from each other. And so part of our goal by working with the youth is to fill the pipeline for everybody at the same time. We can't really just fill one and expect it not to filter to the other. So we really need to fill all those pipelines. We're starting to have some early success in rad tech work, and really looking forward to continuing our work with the community to build from that aspect. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So maybe we'll turn to Oak Ridge. Sean, is there some success stories you've had with trying to build the workforce?
Yes, and just like anywhere else, whether you're at Hanford or Los Alamos, or WIP, Savannah River, whenever you have multiple contractors on site as well as DOE opportunities, there's always going to be people who are moving from one company to the next and looking for better opportunities. And that's great for them. And it's something that we should not necessarily frown upon, but look forward to, because what that is that's continuing to develop the workforce that ultimately may come back to us, but it's going to help our community and the mission for that area move forward in one way or another. At UCOR, we've done a really, in my opinion, a tremendous job of working with the local community colleges to develop programs that are going to allow people to come in and be chemical operators or nuclear operators for us. That's been a tremendous success for us. In fact, whenever Orano chose to come to East Tennessee for their enrichment facility, that was one of the keys that they saw, were those programs at those community colleges and the ability to get workforce from those. Another thing that we do, and is really at the core of who we are at UCOR, is we partner with our unions very well to move forward what we have in the mission, and we're trying to give them a path to success, getting with students whenever they're young, even in high school, so that they can. Not everyone's meant to go to college. I have 3 kids. I have 1 in college, and I'm questioning whether the next one should go to college. So this is a conversation that I'm having at my house pretty much daily. There is a successful path to your life through the trades. And that is a a conversation that is not happening enough, in my opinion, but one that needs to be happening. The trades is an area that is critical to everything that we do. None of us would be up here without them. The workforce is what allows us to be successful in what we do on a day in and day out basis. And we have to have people willing to go into those jobs. And there really is a tremendous opportunity for people if they're willing to go into that route. And there's also an opportunity for them to go through the trades and up into other leadership positions and lead organizations that we're doing, serving the nation and the Department of Energy. So there's a lot of things that we're doing at UCOR specifically, and I think there's things that we can be doing even more so in the community.
Okay, thanks a lot. So Jeff, is there some things you can report on from Savannah Riverside? And then I guess also thinking about, it's been mentioned about we've had the 1 year transition from the landlord responsibilities, and how has that impacted workforce and retention too? Is there some synergies that have been created, or any obstacles that have been noted so far?
Yeah, thanks. I guess at Savannah River, I think in general, I don't see, if I go back to kind of a core question, I don't see much difference in terms of the staffing, whether we're, primarily EM site or primarily NNSA site. We are actively working on all fronts, and I'll come to that in just a minute. We have a lot of new people, relatively young workforce, but very talented, very enthusiastic across the board. People have shifted between missions. They're able to do that at our company right now. SRNS still has a EM mission, and we have people that move from EM focus to NNSA focus. They love the mission, whatever it is or whatever facility they're working in. A lot of them just tend to really like what they're doing, and the fact that they are delivering an important outcome for the U.S., whether it's national security or whether it's environmental cleanup. So we see that I guess one difference we do have in the NSA side is we do, obviously, because we're building a pit production facility, we have to build some fairly extensive ties with Los Alamos in order to have the capability to produce pits. So we've done that, and that's probably much more extensive than what we typically have in place with other EM sites. And we have spent some time trying to really become a stronger part of the national security enterprise in general. But overall, I don't think it's been very dramatic. We agree with everything Sean said. We've seen bringing people in the trades and all that is absolutely critical. It's critical to the future, the numbers of people that we need. We have built some very, very good apprenticeship programs with local schools in different areas. We actually share these programs with other contractors on site to the degree that everybody needs. I mean, like you might graduate a class of 10 and 2 of them or 3 of them go to SRMC, maybe 1 or 2 to SR and NL and the rest to us or something like that. So been very impressed with that. We've outside of that, we've done extensive intern programs. We've had, this past year, it really kind of stands out. We had over 4,000 applicants for what ultimately was 173 intern positions. And we ended up giving offers. We have an offer day at the end of it to, I think, something around 40 plus another 20 or something in the intern program. So it's really been successful for us in terms of actually building relationships and ties and building some, effort for people to come in and see us. And by the way, these are not just local. The interns don't just come from local schools. They actually come from all over the U.S. It's really been amazing. And they're very enthusiastic about the mission, no matter what part, whether it's environmental management or NSA. So it's really been, really amazing and wonderful to see. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks a lot. So just pause for a second to see if there's any other questions from the audience. Not seeing anyone rush up to the microphone. So I think we're technically ending early, but ending late at the same time. So please join me in thanking the panel